Maya had always dreamed of moving to Dubai. The shimmering skyscrapers, the opulent lifestyle, and the promise of a fresh start. Everything about the city lured her in. So when she landed a great job at a prestigious marketing firm, it felt like everything was falling into place. She quickly packed her bags and booked a flight. The excitement of a new beginning drowned out any lingering doubts. Upon arrival, she was greeted by her employer, who helped her settle into a spacious, modern apartment. The catch? She would have to share the place with another girl named Aisha, a fellow employee who had been living there for several months already. Aisha seemed friendly at first, giving Maya a warm welcome, showing her around and assuring her that the two would get along just fine. The apartment was immaculate, perched high above the city with a breathtaking view of the Burj Khalifa. It felt like a dream come true. But Maya couldn't shake the strange sense of unease that lingered in the air. The apartment had a sterile, almost too perfect quality to it, and there was an unsettling silence that settled over the place every night. At first, Aisha seemed like the perfect flatmate. She was quiet, kept to herself, and was polite when they spoke. They shared dinners occasionally, and though Maya sometimes felt like Aisha was watching her a little too intently, she brushed it off as nothing. But things began to change. One evening, after a long day at work, Maya returned home to find Aisha in the living room, staring at the television, unmoving. Her eyes were wide and glazed over, her fingers tapping nervously on the armrest of the couch. Maya waved a hand in front of her face, but Aisha didn't respond. A chill crept up Maya's spine as she asked, "Aisha, are you okay?" Aisha blinked and snapped out of her trance, looking at Maya with a forced smile. "Oh, I'm fine. Just tired, you know? It's been a long day." But her voice had an odd, detached quality to it, as if the words were being pulled from somewhere deep within her, unwillingly. That night, as Maya lay in bed trying to fall asleep, a loud thud echoed through the apartment. She shot up, heart pounding, and listened. There was a soft scraping sound coming from the kitchen, followed by another thud, then silence. She couldn't ignore it anymore. Cautiously, she got out of bed and tiptoed toward the kitchen. To her surprise, it was empty, but the refrigerator door was wide open, the light flickering on and off as if someone had been rummaging through it moments before. A wave of unease washed over her, but she shrugged it off, telling herself that it was probably just the building settling or some odd sound. But the next night, the noises came again, scraping, tapping, and soft whispers that seemed to float through the apartment walls. It wasn't the wind, this was something else. Maya began to notice Aisha's behavior becoming even stranger. She would stand by the windows for hours, staring out at the city, murmuring softly to herself. Her once neat appearance became disheveled, her clothes loose and her hair unbrushed. But the most unsettling part was the way she would smile, wide, eerie, and never quite reaching her eyes. One night, as Maya lay in bed, a loud thud shattered the silence, and it didn't come from the usual places. This time, the sound was coming from Aisha's room. Maya's heart raced. It was after midnight, and the apartment was still as death. She could hear the faint murmurs of a voice, low, unintelligible, and coming from behind Aisha's door. Maya froze in place, her breath shallow as she tried to make sense of it. Was Aisha talking in her sleep, or was someone else in there with her? Tentatively, she stood up and walked toward Aisha's door. She knocked gently, her knuckles tapping on the wood. "Aisha?" She called out softly, but there was no answer. Only the murmurs growing more frantic now, like someone was whispering unintelligible words in a language she didn't recognize. Her hand hovered over the doorknob, but something stopped her. A chill settled over her skin, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. What if Aisha didn't want to be disturbed? But then the voice changed, low and guttural, like something was speaking terrified. Maya quickly backed away, her heart hammering in her chest. She waited there in the hallway until the murmurs stopped. The apartment was still again, but Aisha never came to the door. Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She couldn't sleep that night. The next morning, Maya tried to convince herself it was just her imagination running wild. She made coffee in the kitchen, her hands shaking slightly as she poured the hot liquid into her cup. Then she heard the door open, and Aisha stepped in, looking perfectly normal, her work clothes freshly pressed. Maya stared at her, confused. "Aisha, where were you last night?" Aisha raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" she asked casually, removing her shoes. "The noises," Maya said, her voice trembling. "I heard strange noises from your room, murmurs, a thud. It was coming from your room." Aisha's face remained calm. "I wasn't here last night," she said coolly. "I was at a friend's house. I told you I was meeting with her." Maya felt a chill spread through her, the hair on the back of her neck prickling. "But I heard you. I could hear your voice." Aisha gave her a reassuring smile, her eyes glinting strangely. "You must have been hearing things, Maya. You're just stressed from the move and all the new changes." But Maya wasn't convinced. Maya had been trying to ignore the creeping fear that had settled over her, but it was getting harder to push down. The next day, her unease drove her to ask around the office about Aisha. It wasn't long before she learned something she hadn't expected. The rumours about Aisha's past were far darker than she could have imagined. A colleague, seeing her distress, took her aside. "You don't know the whole story, do you?" she asked in a hushed tone. Aisha was involved in an incident at her previous apartment. There were strange occurrences, strange sounds. Her previous flatmate saw her doing some black magic rituals, and would hear some whispers in strange language coming from her room, and sightings of things that shouldn't be there. They had to bring in a priest to bless the place. It was suspected that she was involved in some dark art. Maya felt her stomach drop. She couldn't believe it. Her mind raced as she pieced the puzzle together. The strange behavior, the whispers, the unexplained noises, all of it suddenly made sense. That night her fear became unbearable. She lay in bed, wide awake, listening to every creak of the apartment. But there was no peace, no silence. There was only the faint whisper of something, or someone, calling her name. The next morning, Maya felt some burning sensation on her back, and when she saw it on mirror, it looked like scratch marks. Now she was extremely scared and made the decision to leave. She would find another place, no matter how difficult it was. But before she could act, she overheard a conversation in the hallway. Aisha was leaving. She was packing her things and quitting her job. "I'm going back home," Aisha said in a low, strained voice. "I can't stay here anymore. There's something wrong with this place." Maya's breath caught in her throat. Aisha had been the one causing all the strange occurrences, hadn't she? Days later, Maya moved out of the apartment, the unsettling memories lingering like a shadow over her. She found a new place, but the fear never quite left her. She couldn't escape the nagging feeling that something had followed her, something attached to her from that apartment. Months later, Maya was shocked to hear the news. Aisha, the girl who had once been her flatmate, had passed away under mysterious circumstances. The police couldn't explain it, but the details of her death were chilling. She had returned to her home country. Her body was found in her apartment, cold and lifeless. Her face was twisted in terror, her eyes wide open, and the cause of death was unknown. Rumors swirled that the apartment had claimed her. The whispers Maya had heard, the strange murmurs that came from Aisha's room, were not just in her head. The last thing Maya heard about Aisha was a chilling detail. The priest who had blessed Aisha's previous apartment had claimed that the spirit haunting it was not a ghost, but something far darker, an ancient entity. Maya wondered if it was the entity who took Aisha's life, and if so, would it come for her next? Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you would like to see more content like this.